My mother wants to send me to military school in order to protect me after my sister stole from me. This happened when I was 14, about a year before my parents were divorced. My younger sister would always treat her allowance like water, especially when it came to purchases she made of lipstick, mall meals, video games, and apparel from Hot Topic. Even though I received an allowance as well, my father had me work for it by having me clean the house and mow the yard. My sister was never made to perform any chores by my mother. My sister never did anything she didn't want to do, with the exception of cleaning her room, and only when her father was there to supervise her. I mowed lawns, picked up abandoned cans from all over the neighborhood, and brought them in for a 5-cent deposit, and did a lot of other strange jobs around the neighborhood to make extra money. At the time, I was making a down payment on a scooter so I could travel about town. I worked on a new job for a period of 2 years. By working a number of odd jobs and putting aside most of my allowance, I was able to accumulate approximately $2,000. On the other hand, getting that money wasn't an easy feat, mostly because of my sister. She would steal from all the little hiding spots where I used to stash my money, even though she knew about them all. I've paraphrased the following memorable passage based on my recollections. "Hey sis, did you take my money again?" was my reply. "What is it, sister?" No, when she was discovered to be lying. She would falter. "I told you are a horrible liar. I have $100 in my savings account, and it is gone." "I didn't do it, so please leave me alone," says sis. She pretends to cry for a moment before running to her mother. "Mama, my sibling is making fun of me." My reply once more, she embezzled from my savings. My mother snapped her fingers and told me to shut up. Is it not evident that this mama's tiny girl is unhappy? Is it just that simple? Since she denied doing anything, it is reasonable to believe that she did not. "If you don't let this go, then I'll lay you down on the ground." The other individual, "I'll enlist Dad's assistance if you don't receive the money back. I'm positive she did it." "Mama, you don't need to do it anymore. Moreover, there is no proof in your possession that she took your money." I answer, "Yes, I do. I maintain a ledger in which I record each and every dollar that I add to it. 3 days ago, X was attained in total. As of right now, there is only Y. $100 is missing, and you know that she has already taken money many times from my savings account. Having stated that, you went shopping yesterday even though I know that sis has already spent her entire allowance for the month. Don't you suppose that she knew exactly where she got the money?" Mom frowns after taking a moment to think. "What are you thinking, sir? You seem to be solidly grounded." She continued, "If you do not go to your room, I am going to grab the belt." I was able to talk about the issue in more detail. But if there's one thing I learned from being in that setting, it was knowing when to cut the conversation short and just give my dad a call. I therefore went to my room and banged the door shut without saying a word to either of them. This was followed by my picking up my then current brick-like Nokia cell phone and calling my father at work. I left a message with all the details after he did not answer the phone. After a little over an hour, he got back to me and promised to handle the matter. Soon after, I heard the landline phone in the house ring, and then I heard my mother, who was in the kitchen talking on the phone, yelling at my father. I was in my room trying to listen, and the only thing I could make out was my mother trying to justify her actions. But it was never an effective tactic when she was wrong, and she would eventually say something like, "Okay, she has already spent the money, therefore you are responsible for returning it if it turns out that she did steal it." Conversely, my mother hurled a fit of rage at me as she opened my door. "I can't believe you came clean about me, you little snitch. After all I do for you, you couldn't just let a little cash slip through your fingers." My answer: "You acknowledge that my sister took it then?" "Then? You know what, it makes no difference to me," a disdainful mother adds. "Girls tend to need more money than boys do. There's no reason you shouldn't give it to her straight away." To put it plainly, not that much. "You should be aware that it was more than just a small amount of money," I stated. "Even if she had just taken $1, I would still like it returned, despite the fact that she took $100. You would not want to experience theft if it happened to you. If my sister had stolen from me, the same outcome would occur. You already know that she is guilty. I want that money backdated in some way. She did nothing. But I worked really hard at it. Mom, my sweetie is free from obligations. She is a princess, and she should be treated as such. Me? That isn't what worries me. Maybe she can go be a princess far from me and my belongings. That's all, Mom, you little slurper. I'm going to give you a hard time." Standing up and glaring at her, I told her that since I had done nothing wrong, and was already as tall as she was at 14 and fairly strong from all the outdoor work I was doing, I wouldn't allow her attempt. After a moment of inaction, my mother let out a loud scream and swung her arm, missing the mark by hitting my dresser with her arm. I presume this caused serious injuries, She was trying to contain her misery by holding her palm out and making me a horrible face. Her fangs were growling. She just turned around and walked away. I heard her making a commotion, cursing and shattering the wall as she went down the hall, down the stairs, and into the kitchen, going about her typical routine when her weight was refused. Her plan when she didn't weigh was to go to her wine fridge and get drunk. My sister was watching me from the door of her bedroom. She gave me a terrified look before bolting back into her room and slamming the door. Mom was evolving quickly. She was her secret weapon for getting away with the atrocities she inflicted against me. A few hours later, my dad returned home from work and dragged my sister into my room to see me. She told me I wasn't grounded after acknowledging that she had stolen from me. My dad repeatedly begged Sis to speak up until she was practically yelling it, but she refused to even look at me during the entire time she was being forced to apologize. At first, she apologized in the quietest, squeakiest voice possible. After that, Dad gave me $100 to replace the items my sister had stolen and told me she would be suspended for a week. Her stipend will be used to cover the stolen funds. She started crying, calling her father awful, and hurried to her room. My mother just sat on the back porch, drunk on her favorite wine, ignoring all of us. She even acted as though the entire thing had never happened, and she never offered me an apology. Although my mother gave it to her instead of my dad at that time, my sister still received her next allowance. A few days later, on my dad's day off, we went to a local store where he bought a combination safe to store my money and other little goods in. We didn't notify my sister or mother that I had it. It was configured for a 4-digit code, which I believe was 4,962 at the time. I emptied all of my money into the safe, locked it, and put it behind my closet. After a few weeks, I came home one day to find my room rifled after going to mow some neighbors. I called my mother to let her know what Sis had done to my room. My baby didn't do this, Mom claimed. Did you then? I stated. Mom? Me? I mean, there was only going to be one of you. When I left, this room was empty and there was no one else in it. Mom was obviously upset at being discovered by logic. All right. If she did, though, then what? You already had it coming from your lack of kindness toward her. Then she turned to run away. I called my dad again and left another message on his work answering machine, detailing what had happened. I proceeded to inform my sister that I was certain she was the one who had destroyed my room. Before she could even attempt to reply, I told her that she was no longer able to access my money since I had secured it in a safe. Then she threw a fuss, of course, and cruel Mama Bear ran to her rescue. For the next 20 minutes, my sister continued to cry in her room while I cleaned her room and reassured her that she could no longer access my money. Not really missing or ruined, but scattered and tossed around. I collected everything and put it back just the way it was. Still, while I tidied my room, I felt more haughty than I had ever felt. But the following day I saw that it had torn again, and my window had also been harmed. Sis had tossed the safe out the window after failing to open it. My sister admitted to doing it, seemingly proud of herself, when my parents got home from work. I told my father right away. My mother really attempted to take her side, saying that I shouldn't have gotten the safe in the first place. However, my father chastised her and told me he got it for me because he was fed up with her taking advantage of me. Every time she takes money from me and spends it, my dad had to reimburse me since my mother never would. My dad gave me a combination key lockbox with the key to my room next to the door, and in addition to a lock for my door. We had to replace my room's window entirely. My sister broke my window, and she ground herself for a month, staying inside her room and crying. When Dad returned home from work, Mom always allowed him return to what she wanted to do, like play video games or watch TV. Being aware that my mother and sister would have done everything in their power to further my misery, I made the decision to remain silent. My sister began hounding me for money every time she spent her entire stipend once her month-long grounding came to an end. Just told her that since she never saved anything, she would never be able to repay me. Sincerely, I made an IOU to test her willingness to sign it before Dad. Later, she tore the paper in half and rushed to her mother sobbing again over my inconsideration. My mother would try to force me to give her the money. Still, I would tell her what her father would do. That way I wouldn't give my sister any more money if she needed it. Then, my mom made a concerted effort to enroll me in military school, but my father disagreed. And for those asking why, back then my dad didn't just help me open a savings account. The truth is, I have no idea. Our approach seems to have been to save it in cash. Update. My mother once came right up to my door. My safe had been thrown through my bedroom window by my sister. My dad got me a deadbolt lock for my door that has a wall-mounted lockbox that requires a code to access the key not too long after he gave me a safe for my money. While my sister and mother were away, we installed the lock and lockbox together. When my sister first returned, she passed by my room. I caught her eyeing the lock before she hurried to fetch her mother. They both came barreling down the stairs to meet my dad and me. This is what I remember, paraphrased. Mom points and gives a couple quick snaps. What on earth is that? Dad, a lock on the door. I know what the swearing thing is, Mom. What makes it there? Dad. Because you never feel the need to chastise us or intervene when our daughter takes anything from Kegel or goes through his room. From now on, the lock remains that way. He's just 14, Mom. And this is my house. He cannot have a lock on his door. No, this is our house, Dad responded. But as far as I can tell, I've covered the majority of costs, including the mortgage. Rarely do you pay anything. I'm sick of you treating our daughter better than Kegel, who endures endless hardship. Mom says, all right, then, I'll have you tell me the lockbox code at the very least. Dad is staring at a deadpan. You've demonstrated that I can no longer trust you, so I'm not doing it. Then Mom snapped at her and hurried down the stairs. My sister just pouted and took a leisurely stroll towards her room. Everything was well with the new lock. I stopped thinking twice about locking it every time I left my bedroom. My mother and sister would sometimes catch me watching, but I would always move my hand or body to block their view. They detested that, but they were unable to stop it. Late in the month, my sister came to me and begged for $40 so she could get a video game she really wanted. Me, why do you still insist on receiving money even though we both know you will never be able to repay it? I promise, sis, I'll repay you. Me, you're not going to? You know you'd much rather spend your entire allowance than reimburse me. Every month you spend all you own plus a little more. You always act in that way. Sister. No, I don't. I say, well, how about we test that for contracts, people? Always have a witness. I then went to my room, got a piece of paper and a pen, and drafted by hand an IO contract that said Dad would co-sign and that sis would reimburse me for the $40 after she received her monthly stipend. S read the paper and started to sniff. She tore it in two and fled, crying, to her mother again. Like she did each and every time her request was turned down. Mom's sister, bending down, crying. Mom, what's up, sweet little prince? What did Kegel do next? She wanted to borrow money, so I asked her to sign an IU in front of her father. Then her freckles appeared. And why would you go after it, Mom? All she wanted was a little loan. Me, would you also sign the IU guarantee that she reimburses the money? You little expletive, says Mom. I just need to loan her the money, I don't have to sign anything. Mom got up, held out her arm as if to strike me, but suddenly withdrew, leaving me without a signed IOU. You need a paper trail for everything, Mom. You resemble your father exactly. I adore. I would argue that being just like my father is a wonderful thing, since it's far better than being just like my sister, who never does anything well. This is me, starting to casually walk up the stairs to my room. What was that, you little expletives? Mom asked. She rushed up the stairs as I went into my bedroom and locked the door. My mother would throw open my bedroom door to yell at me back then. She leapt forward and opened the door with a single, sweeping motion, but I had only had the lock on my door for a short time at this point, so she wasn't accustomed to it. After I shut my door, she attempted to throw it open and crashed hard into the deadbolt. Then I heard her fall to the floor and start to cry out in pain. She had struck the door with great force, both her body and her face. This old solid wood door gave her a pimple on her lip and a bump on her forehead. When I opened the door, she was lying on the floor, banging her fist. Mom cried out, "You little one, you did this to me." Swear word. Me? It was something you did to yourself. You are anchored, Mom. Leave my eyes. When I phoned my father later, he just complained about everything on the phone. He said that even if I wasn't grounded, I was still in serious trouble for provoking her and allowing him to deal with her once he got home. That covered it. At the end, Dad decreased my stipend that month, gave me a hard lecture, and assigned me more housework. After that day, I made her sign an IU every time she pleaded for money. She really did take issue with that. Update 2, when my mother attempted to have me sent to military school and showed her dad's signature, it completely backfired on her. My mother appeared to become more wary that trying to hurt me would not go well for her after I refused to submit to her threats of spanking. The last instance. She shouted mostly at me. It wasn't until years later that she showed interest in my house that she touched me again. I ignored it and continued with my usual routine of classes and odd jobs. My dad gave me an engine kit for my bike so I could ride around town about the time I turned 15. He suggested that I would be better off saving for a car rather than a scooter, and this would help right away. I continued to save for a car, and eventually came to understand his logic. But a few days later, after I'd mowed the yard, I was raking grass off the back patio when I stumbled over a military academy pamphlet. It was behind a chair on the floor near my mother's favorite spot to sit and drink wine. I held off on showing my dad what I had found out until he got home. I had the impression that she was hatching some crazy plan. Feeling a little irritated, he took the booklet to my mom and asked her about it without passing any snap decisions. "Honey, what's this?" asked Dad. Mom turns white when she sees the pamphlet. "Nothing. I have never before seen it." "Dad, precisely? If you were going to try to send Kegel to military school, you know I wouldn't let it." Mom yelled, "He needs to learn some discipline," and broke down in tears. "Because he locks his door so frequently, I can no longer even spank him because he is too large. I have no other choice but to reprimand him for being a brat who disobeys." "Papa, Kegel did nothing wrong when he confronted you about your ludicrous favoritism. If anything, our daughter is the brat because of you, the way you treat her, and the fact that you allow her get away with robbing her brother. The discussion on Kegel's transfer to a military academy is over. If you attempt to send him, please assist me. I'll use every tool at my disposal to put the hammer down on you." "Mom, that means that whatever power I do have left in this house will be taken away by this entire family. If I had nothing, I would as well not exist. Papa, I know you would much rather be nothing than chose Keel. Reduce the theatricality of your actions. Kegel, who now has his own money, is maturing." Mama stormed out of the room. The next morning, before school, I noticed her trying really hard to squeeze something into the kitchen rubbish can. While I was waiting for her to go for work, I unearthed what she was attempting to conceal. Completely by hand, she completed the application for military school. It required the signatures of both parents or legal guardians. There were 2 signatures on the paper. I could understand Mom's, but it seemed like a shoddy attempt to mimic Dad's. He took tremendous pride in his signature, which was elegant and classy. My mother could never do that again without looking like a phony. After being confronted, she presumably realized it and gave up trying to send me away. I preserved the papers and later presented them to my dad. Despite his rage, he decided to let it go because she had already done it. However, he kept the documents on file just in case. Word spread that my mother was seeing her old high school boyfriend after a few more months. The final straw for my dad was when he filed for divorce. He bought another house, and I moved in with him a few months later. He moved quickly to expedite the divorce, pulling out the military school paperwork my mom had made with his signature. Not only that, but he also had proof that she had put his signature on a credit card application and another stuff I can't recall, which worried Mom about him getting arrested for fraud. They moved through the court system quite swiftly because she complied with the majority of his demands. Mom bought the house since Dad didn't want it. However, since my sister had, understandably, chosen to live with her, she also demanded alimony and child support. The judge awarded my mother limited alimony and child support for 10 years of monthly payments. In any case, alimony covered my sister's allowance. He held the forged signatures over Mom's head to comfort her for years, even though she was furious about it and swore to bring him back to court. My sister pouted at me and gloated that Mom had told her that she was a princess and the more deserving sibling, which was why I was leaving the house. I just shook my head, no longer caring, and told her to think about what she wanted, as liberated as a bird at last. My relationship with my sister, who visited Dad's house once a week, gradually worsened until we eventually stopped speaking altogether for years. I was rarely attracted to Mom's place. In any case, she converted my old room into a home office. We appreciate your time, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so by clicking the notification bell to be notified when more startling real-life stories are posted.